the great thing about Paul writing from prison is he makes it clear the gospel is not locked up. He may be shut up, but the gospel isn't. And that belief lies behind everything that Paul says and does. I was thinking about this in relation to the book of Acts not long ago, that when we read Acts, if you come to it for the first time, you read through Paul's journeys and he's getting to Rome and you want to know what happens next. And Luke doesn't tell you because, of course, the hero of the story is not Paul, but the gospel. And the point is that the gospel has got to Rome, and once it's in Rome, it's going to go to the ends of the earth. So for Paul, the gospel is not locked up. Times may be tough, but the gospel of Jesus is tougher. And we who are grasped by that gospel and long to be of use in its service need to hold on tightly to that belief. And Philippians is a great letter to help us do exactly that. And that's my overall title, The Public Life of the People of Christ. That is where Philippians is going, as actually several of Paul's letters are going in that direction. How is the church to demonstrate to the world who the true God is, who the true Lord of the world is? We are not just to be formed as followers of Jesus in our personal lives and our Christian fellowships, though both of those, of course, are central and vital, but we are to live in such a way that the outside world looking on will be confronted to its surprise with the living, breathing good news. We in the Western churches have often backed off from that challenge of thinking through what it means to order our lives such that they shine out into the world in the way that Paul was hoping. And I think that's the main thrust of so much of this letter, making the good news visible. Chapter 1, verse 27 says it all. Your public behavior must match up to the gospel of the Messiah Jesus. First century Philippi did not expect, and so much of our modern Western society on either side of the Atlantic does not expect, to have a social grouping in its midst that behaves differently, that marches to a different drummer, as the cliche has it, that celebrates cheerfully and gratefully, that lives as good neighbors, but in a different way. Our vocation is to be the genuine alternative society, showing the rest of the world that there is a different way to be human. And it's an attractive way, even if it's dangerous, because not everyone approves of putting someone else, in this case Jesus, in the place of or ahead of Caesar himself in Rome and all subsequent Caesars of wherever they are and whatever stripe they come. Because that's what's at stake. Philippi is in northern Greece, you probably know this, and it was a Roman colony. 100 years before Paul's time, there had been civil wars in Rome, and the Romans didn't like to fight their civil wars on home territory. That would get really too awful, and Rome itself might get burned to the ground or whatever. Well, bad things did happen later. But what tended to happen was they went off and had battles elsewhere. They kind of outsourced their civil wars. And so after the civil wars, the battle-hardened old soldiers were not wanted back in Rome, thank you very much, because you can't do with soldiers swaggering around the streets and taking over people's houses and stuff. So they gave them grants of land in northern Greece and Turkey and elsewhere. No doubt there were people there who weren't too pleased about that either, but, well, we're Rome, so that we rule this place. Though some would have recognized that a strong connection to Rome might be a civic and economic advantage, Philippi was a staging post on the main east-west road. It was a good position to take advantage of Roman patronage and to be a center, a place where people would come in from Rome itself further west, having crossed the Adriatic Sea, or from what we call Turkey and points east. Now, once Octavian Caesar, a little bit of ancient history here for you, just so hang in there. Once Octavian Caesar had won the last battle of the Civil War and had taken power, acquiring the title Augustus, the venerated one, there was one word which summed up the Roman message: gospel, good news. Peace and prosperity has come at last. Actually, most people knew it was a fiction. The only reason there was peace was that Augustus was the last man standing. Everyone else had been wiped out or driven away, last being Antony, of course. But they made a great thing of it. We've now got a man who has brought peace to the world and prosperity. We're going to have a new age, a new golden age. The world has turned its great corner, and we have the Novus Ordo Seclorum, the new age of ages now, because Caesar has rescued us. He is the savior. We have a new emperor. And many who lived in the Philippi area were Roman citizens. Not everyone, but many. And they knew that if there was any problem locally, they could call on Caesar, not that far away in Rome, and worst case, Caesar could come and rescue them, save them. The future looked rosy with this Lord and this Savior. You see where all this is going. For Paul, of course, this vision of civic life, owing allegiance to Caesar, was a parody of the truth. For him, the real good news, the word good news in Greek, euangelion, goes back not to Roman rhetoric, but to Isaiah. You who tell the good news to Zion, chapter 40, or the good news that when the watchmen hear that Yahweh is coming back in Isaiah 52. That good news for Paul, the true good news, had been unveiled in the message about Jesus himself. He was the true Lord of the world. He was already the Savior. He was the one who would one day return to complete the task of pacifying the whole place and saving his people and establishing his rule in the world. And that belief, that good news, rather than Caesar's good news, is the theological backbone of this present letter, flying in the face of the Roman belief system, as of so many civic belief systems from that day to this. In Jesus himself, in other words, we see who the true God really is, the Creator, the God of Israel, who has shown his powerful hand in keeping his promises to his people, raising Jesus from the dead, and establishing him as Lord. And here it is that in Jesus' followers, the world is to see who the true God really is.